Welcome back to CEEN Caribbean News. It's now time to go in depth. In Jamaica, the government and by extension the business community is celebrating some good news. A Bloomberg news report indicates that Jamaica Stock Exchange, JSE, surged to the top in 2015 ahead of developed economies across the globe. The Bloomberg report published last Thursday was entitled "It's Jamming. Jamaica's Tiny Stock Market Conquers World in 2015." The news has been well received by Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips. To help us understand the impact of such a rating, we are joined by economist Dr. Davidson Dawe and CEO of the private sector organization of Jamaica, Mr. Dennis Chung. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, good evening. How are you doing?
Thanks. Now, Mr. Chung, does this assessment indicate that confidence is returning to the local economy and business investor confidence are also improving?
Yeah, it definitely does. You know that for the past year and a half, basically, the investor confidence has been fairly high, as well as consumer confidence. And the fact is that people don't invest in equities, in companies, unless they have confidence in the market. You see worldwide, I mean, when economies are doing poorly, or when you have recessions, one of the first places to get hit is the market, because it finds itself into the economic activity. And what it means is that if people are investing in companies, it means that they expect them to do better. They expect the profits to grow. They expect the value to return. So equities is a long-term thing. So once people start investing in equities, particularly when you have an 80% growth in the market, it means that people see value on the market that has not been taken up. So it definitely does portray some amount of confidence in the market.
And Dr. Dawe, what do you think about the prospects for the economy with this assessment?
Well, first of all, congratulate Jamaica on such a feat. It has been long awaiting, and it is very nice to know that Jamaica has actually begun to propel into something a little greater than what we anticipated. In terms of the economy, I think it's a very good beginning. Now it's our time now to actually take what's happening to us and translate it into more of a consumer-based, development. I believe that the business community has actually shown some confidence in the growth of the nation's economy, but that has to trickle down to the consumer, because if the consumer doesn't buy into the growth that is now taking place, then of course this will be short-lived. But I am anticipating that Jamaica, being on a good footing now, will take advantage of the situation and actually begin to look at situations such as more foreign investment, allowing the private sector to expand, regulating, a little more liberally, so that, jobs can be created. Because one of the things that's going to keep the market going is the provision of jobs. And if we cannot provide those jobs, then of course this will be just a fairy tale that will come to an end shortly. So I'm hoping definitely that we embark on that journey to build on the successes that we have had, and to make sure that the consumer becomes an intricate part of the whole process.
Okay, Mr. Chung, as Mr. Dawe spoke about building on the successes, Bloomberg credited the rebounding economy along with stronger investor safeguards as two of the main provisions that helped the JSE to surge more than 80% in 2015. Now, is that an indication that the ongoing economic reform program with the IMF is bearing fruits?
Yeah, well, the economic reform program, I mean, even outside of this, I mean, we have seen where it has been bearing fruit, because what it has brought is fiscal discipline. And the fiscal accounts really was what was causing all of our challenges. And therefore, when you look at the legislative changes and the fiscal discipline that has come, I mean, it has reduced our debt burden. Our debt burden has moved from 150% in 2012 to 126%. We see our balance of payment surplus for the first time in 10 years at the start of this year. We see low interest rates because of the reduced debt burden. We see lower inflation rates. We've seen a devaluation of the currency from around 80-something to 120 now. That was to be expected because the differences in productivity is always reflected in your exchange rate, but it has been relatively stable. So it has been working. I mean, what we need to know is move towards more community-based projects. We can see some growth on the ground. I think that is lacking right now. So the whole issue of the government bureaucracy and the crime and theft and tax rates that was pointed out in the Global Competitiveness Report, and not necessarily tax rates per se, although they're a little bit high, but the whole matter of tax competitiveness, I think that's the key. So it is working. We have to shift now. We have to move to a higher gear now if we want to sustain it. But, I mean, definitely, I think if we continue on this path, if we put the policies in place that is going to drive growth on the ground, then, you know, I think that we will see a better 2016. But, of course, you know, it's also some individual responsibility because you're not going to see it trickle down and filter down to on the ground unless people develop their skill levels, they develop their productivity levels, which means that there needs to be an individual and a policy focus on education. There needs to be a policy focus on labor market reform. That's going to be critical going forward if we're going to see it sustained and the on-the-ground feeling.
And what about some of the government's growth initiatives that they have spoke about previously and prior? What about things like the agro-parks, the logistics hub? How will those initiatives help to sustain this growth?
Those are definitely going to help. You know, they have been helping. The agro-parks in particular have been helping with some amount of consistent agricultural production. We've seen the improvement in tourism. But the fact of the matter is that, I mean, all of that is going to take us to a 1.5%, 2% growth. We need to be growing at 3%, 4%, 5%. If we're to move the needle to 4% and 5%, then we have to be more productive. We have to have more policies that are going to encourage capital. So I think we will have growth, definitely, you know, 1.5%, 2% growth, but that's not sufficient. We need to see growth of 5%, and that is when you're going to start seeing people on the ground feel it. So that really is the difference I'm talking about. You know, I mean, you know, what we're doing now will take us 1.5%, but we shouldn't be there. You know, just this year alone, I mean, the drought cost us 1%. I mean, that's a matter of how we structure our water commission. You know, those are policy issues. Those are management issues in the public sector, which is why inefficient government bureaucracy comes up as the most problematic factor to doing business. So, you know, that's the point I want to make.
Dr. Dawe, what do you think will continue to ensure that we have high levels of growth?
Well, as Dennis said, one of the major factors is education there. We have to make our country a little more prepared to develop the systems that we put in place. Policies are okay, but you know you need the manpower to push those policies. And if we have an uneducated population, then of course we don't expect growth. And I would just say that the government is poised to do great things if it really takes on, you know, to what is happening to us at this point. And the important thing is to make sure that the consumer is confident in what's happening, because growth can only happen when the consumer is happy. And in order to make the consumer proficient in the process of growth, we have to educate them and we have to do a whole lot of training. And of course, as Dennis said, we have to develop policies that's going to reflect that there is that type of change happening in the nation. Furthermore, if we are not prepared to ensure that the youth who carry carrying the flag, actually, the students leaving colleges and not getting jobs are employed, then guess what's going to happen? we are not going to succeed. And it is important that the emphasis be placed on developing the education system to a point where everybody gets an opportunity to participate in the actions of the government as it relates to growth.
All right. I know, gentlemen, that you have been challenging the government to go for more growth. Should Dr. Peter Phillips be excited, or should much of the praise be given to him for this Bloomberg achievement that Bloomberg has credited to the JSE?
Well, you know, I have to say that, I mean, he has made a very valiant effort in trying to put this together. I believe, I'm not even sure he himself expected that to happen. But, you know, hard work always brings good reward. And if he continues to keep focus on what is important, then I'm sure that he'll be even happier in another year.
What say you, Mr. Chung, about the performance of Dr. Peter Phillips from 2012 to now?
I think he has done very well. You know, the fact of the matter is that they just sticking to the economic reform program. I don't think there's any other time that I've seen in our history that I can remember that we have stuck to the program like this, you know, which is why this is our 13th IMF agreement, because the previous ones have failed. So, you know, much credit due to him. I mean, he has, I remember when he just started out, he was under significant pressure, and, you know, he stuck to the task. You know, he did what needed to be done. He has maintained the fiscal discipline. He has demonstrated time and time again that he's committed to reducing the debt to GDP ratio, putting the legislative change in place. Not just him, because, I mean, the efforts of Mark Golding, for example, have been significant. I mean, we don't talk a lot about that, but the legislative changes that he has made has really been very significant. So it must have been a push from the leadership level of the government for this to happen. But, you know, much credit is due to them for this. But, you know, we need to go a step further. One thing I can say about Dr. Phillips from personal experience is that he has always been willing to sit down and dialogue. You know, it's not just a matter of saying, this is the situation, take it. You know, we have had significant dialogue and you know, through him, the policymakers have listened. So, you know, much credit due to him. But as I said, we need to now go the next step, and I'm sure that he will enable that step to happen. But we need to move to the next step now, from 2% to 3 to 4 and 5% growth.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chung and Dr. Davidson Dawe. Thank you, gentlemen. That was economist Mr. Davidson Dawe and CEO of the private sector of Jamaica, Mr. Dennis Chung.